Number, Imperial Command, panicked. Human warfleets, materialized. Without warning, the massive crystal throne room of the Zilani Imperial Command buzzed with the usual arrogance that had kept the galaxy under their iron grip for 3,000 years. Admiral Vex Thara stood before the holographic star map, her four arms moving gracefully as she directed fleet movements across 17 different star systems. The Zilani had built their empire on a simple principle: overwhelming technological superiority and the belief that no species could challenge their divine right to rule. "Report from Sector 7-9, announced Commander Kestal from his position at the communication array. His voice carried the typical boredom of someone managing what the Zilani considered pest control operations. "The human resistance on Colony Theta Prime has been eliminated. Estimated casualties: 47,000 human civilians." Admiral Vex Thara's mandibles clicked in satisfaction. Humans had been nothing more than an annoyance for the past 50 years since first contact. They possessed no advanced technology, no powerful warships, and certainly no ability to threaten the mighty Zilani Empire. Their small colonies scattered across the outer rim served only as minor inconveniences that required occasional cleansing operations. "Excellent," Vex Thara replied, not bothering to look up from her tactical display. "How many human settlements remain in that sector?" "Intelligence suggests approximately 12 minor colonies and 3 larger settlements. At our current pace, we should have the entire sector cleared within 6 standard months." The Admiral nodded approvingly. The humans had shown remarkable stubbornness in their refusal to submit to Zilani rule. But stubbornness meant nothing against superior firepower. Their primitive weapons and basic spacecraft were no match for Zilani plasma cannons and energy shields. Every engagement had ended the same way: swift Zilani victory followed by systematic elimination of human presence. Emperor Thex Maran himself had declared humans a minor evolutionary dead end that would be processed efficiently, like all inferior species before them. The Zilani had perfected this process over centuries, wiping out dozens of civilizations that had dared to resist their expansion. Suddenly, the massive doors to the command center burst open. A young communications officer named Zilana rushed in, her breathing rapid and her usual composure completely shattered. This was highly irregular behavior that immediately drew every eye in the room. "Admiral," she gasped, struggling to catch her breath. "Emergency transmission from the Outer Rim defense grid." Vex Thara's 4 eyes narrowed dangerously. "Officer Zilana, you know the proper protocols for entering this command center. What could possibly justify this breach of—" "They're gone," Zilana interrupted. "Something that would normally result in immediate punishment. The entire 7th Fleet. 300 warships just disappeared." "Buddy." The command center fell into complete silence. The 7th Fleet represented one of their most powerful naval forces, responsible for maintaining order across 5 star systems. Ships of that magnitude didn't simply disappear. "Explain yourself immediately," Vex Thara demanded, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. Zilana activated her portable display unit with trembling claws. "At 14:30 Standard Time, we received routine status reports from all 7th Fleet vessels. They were conducting standard patrol operations near the Kepler 442 system. Then, nothing." "Technical malfunction," Commander Kestal suggested dismissively. "Solar interference, perhaps, or equipment failure." "No, sir," Zilana replied firmly. "We sent probe ships to investigate. They found debris fields. Massive debris fields. The energy signatures suggest complete destruction of all vessels." Admiral Vex Thara felt something she hadn't experienced in decades: uncertainty. The Zilani had no enemies capable of destroying an entire fleet. Their technology was centuries ahead of any known civilization. No species in the galaxy possessed the firepower necessary to eliminate 300 warships. "What about survivors?" she asked. "None found, Admiral. The destruction appears to have been instantaneous and impossible." Kestel declared. No known weapon system could achieve such results. The humans certainly don't possess this capability. Their largest vessel barely qualifies as a patrol craft by our standards. Vexthara's mind raced through possibilities. Rogue asteroid field? Massive stellar event? Some unknown natural phenomenon? None of these explanations satisfied her growing unease. Have we detected any unusual energy readings? Unknown ship signatures? Anything that might indicate the presence of hostile forces? That's just it, Admiral, Zilana replied, her voice barely above a whisper. The probe ships reported finding something else in the debris field. Technology fragments that don't match any known civilization in our databases. The metal compositions, energy patterns, weapon residue, it's all completely unknown. The massive holographic display suddenly flickered and changed, showing incoming priority transmissions from multiple sectors. Red warning indicators began flashing across the tactical map as reports flooded in from across the Empire. Admiral, called out another communications officer from across the room. We're receiving distress calls from the Rigel system. The Fourth Fleet reports engagement with unknown hostile forces. Before Vexthara could respond, more alerts cascaded across their screens. Fifth Fleet requesting immediate reinforcements in the Vega sector. Eighth Fleet under attack by unidentified vessels. Third Fleet has gone silent. The command center erupted into controlled chaos as officers frantically tried to process the incoming flood of emergency transmissions. In the span of minutes, half of their naval forces were either under attack, requesting assistance, or had simply vanished without explanation. Get me a direct line to Fleet Command, Vexthara ordered, her earlier confidence evaporating. I want every available ship redirected to Vex 3. The main display screen suddenly cleared, showing a single transmission source. The image that appeared made every Zilani in the room freeze in disbelief. It was a human face, not the terrified, pleading expression they were accustomed to seeing from human prisoners. This human looked calm, confident, and disturbingly pleased with himself. He wore what appeared to be a military uniform unlike anything in their databases, with insignia that suggested high rank. Greetings, Zilani Empire, the human said in perfect Zilani language, his tone conversational and almost friendly. My name is Admiral Chen Wei, of the Terran Defense Coalition. I believe you've been looking for us. The human's image was crystal clear, suggesting advanced communication technology. Behind him, they could see what appeared to be a sophisticated command bridge filled with humans working at stations that looked far more advanced than anything they'd seen from human settlements. For 50 years, Admiral Chen continued, you've hunted our people across the galaxy. You've destroyed our colonies, killed our families, and assumed we were nothing more than primitives with barely functional spacecraft. Vexthara found her voice. Human. You will cease this transmission immediately and surrender yourself for. I'm afraid that's not going to happen, Chen interrupted politely. You see, those primitives you've been slaughtering? They weren't our military. They weren't our main population. They were farmers, miners, and explorers who left Earth before we developed our current technology. Impossible, Kestal muttered. Our intelligence networks would have detected any advanced human civilization. Chen smiled, and somehow that expression was more terrifying than any threat. Would they? Your intelligence networks were designed to monitor known civilizations using familiar technologies. We've been studying you for decades, learning your communication frequencies, your patrol routes, your tactical doctrines. Meanwhile, you never bothered to look for us in the places that mattered. The implications of his words began sinking in. If this human was telling the truth, then everything the Zilani thought they knew about humanity was wrong. Where are our fleets? Vex, Thara demanded. Gone, Chen replied simply. Your ships were impressive by your standards, but ultimately inadequate for their intended purpose. We've spent 50 years preparing for this moment, developing weapons and technologies specifically designed to counter Zilani capabilities. You're bluffing, the Admiral said, But her voice lacked conviction. Even if you possessed advanced technology, you lack the numbers to threaten the Empire. Our forces span 17 star systems. 16 now, Chen corrected gently. And decreasing by the hour. You see, Admiral, while you were playing extermination games with our colonies, we were building something you never anticipated. A unified human war machine with a single, focused objective. The human leaned forward slightly, his expression becoming deadly serious. The complete destruction of the Zilani Empire, and everyone who participated in the genocide of our people. Red alerts continued cascading across their displays as more fleets reported contact with hostile forces or simply disappeared from their tracking systems. The unthinkable was happening. The Zilani Empire was under serious attack for the first time in its 3,000-year history. This is Admiral Vex Thara of the Imperial Command. She broadcast on all frequencies. All fleets are ordered to converge on the capital system immediately. Maximum alert status. Across all installations. Chen's image smiled again. Too late for that, I'm afraid. Your fleets are scattered across the galaxy, and we're already among you. Did you really think we'd announce our presence before positioning ourselves for maximum tactical advantage? The massive tactical display suddenly showed new contacts appearing throughout Zilani space. Hundreds of them. Ship signatures unlike anything in their databases, materializing as if they had been invisible until this moment. How? Vex Thara whispered. Human ingenuity, Chen replied. Something you never bothered to understand before you decided to exterminate us. You thought we were primitives because you saw what you expected to see. You never imagined that a species might choose to appear weak while secretly preparing for war. The transmission ended, leaving the Zilani command center in stunned silence as alarms continued sounding throughout their space. For the first time in 3 millennia, the Empire faced an existential threat from an enemy they had completely underestimated. Admiral Vex Thara stared at the tactical display showing human fleet positions throughout their territory and realized with growing horror that the hunters had suddenly become the hunted. Number, Imperial Command, panicked. Human. War fleets materialized without warning. The Zilani capital world of Thexvara had never experienced fear. For 3,000 years, it had stood as the unshakable center of galactic power, protected by massive defense platforms and surrounded by the most advanced fleet in known space. Now, as Admiral Vex Thara watched human ships appear on long-range sensors like ghosts materializing from the void, that confidence crumbled like ancient stone. Status report, she barked, her forearms working frantically across multiple control interfaces. Human vessels detected in sectors 4, 7, 9, and 12, reported Commander Kessistal, his voice strained. Admiral, they're not attacking the outer defenses. They're already inside our defensive perimeter. That's impossible. Our detection grids would have. They're using some kind of stealth technology, interrupted Senior Analyst Mordeth from the intelligence station. Retroactive analysis of sensor logs shows subtle gravitational distortions that we missed during real-time monitoring. They've been moving through our space undetected for possibly months. The magnitude of the intelligence failure began settling over the command center like a suffocating blanket. The Zilani had built their empire on technological supremacy. Yet somehow these supposedly primitive humans had developed stealth capabilities that rendered their most advanced sensors useless. Emperor Thexmaran's holographic image flickered to life above the central command platform, his massive form radiating the imperial authority that had ruled the galaxy for millennia. Explain to me, his voice resonated through the chamber, how an inferior species has managed to penetrate our most secure space. Your Imperial Majesty. Vex Thara began, struggling to maintain her composure. Preliminary reports suggest the humans have been systematically studying our defense patterns, and, I don't want excuses, the Emperor's psychic presence pressed down on everyone in the room. A reminder of the Zilani's natural telepathic abilities that had helped them dominate other species for so long. I want solutions. How many ships are we facing? Analyst Mordeth consulted his readings with trembling claws. Initial estimates suggest approximately 800 vessels, Your Majesty. But the numbers keep changing as more ships decloak or reveal themselves. 800? The Emperor's laugh was bitter and disbelieving. Against the entire Imperial Navy? Even if these humans possess advanced technology, they cannot hope to match our combined fleet strength of over 10,000 warships. About those warships, Your Imperial Majesty, Vexthara said reluctantly. Current estimates indicate that 60% of our naval forces have been eliminated or are unaccounted for. The humans have been systematically destroying our fleets across multiple systems simultaneously. The silence that followed was deafening. Never in Zelani history had their military suffered losses on such a scale. Their tactical doctrines had no provisions for dealing with an enemy capable of coordinated strikes across their entire empire. "Show me these human vessels," the Emperor commanded. The main display shifted to show detailed scans of the approaching human fleet. What they saw defied everything they understood about human technology. Sleek, angular ships that seemed to bend light around their hulls, weapon systems that pulsed with unfamiliar energy signatures, and most disturbing of all, vessels that appeared to be larger than some Zelani battle stations. "These ships," Mordeth said quietly, "they're not just advanced. They represent a completely different technological paradigm. Look at these energy patterns. They're using power generation methods that shouldn't be possible with any known physics." Commander Kessestal enhanced the tactical display, highlighting specific details. Their hull compositions register as unknown metallic compounds. Weapon signatures suggest directed energy systems operating at frequencies we've never encountered. And their propulsion. They're moving without any detectable engine emissions. "Impossible," the Emperor declared. "No species develops this level of technology without it being detected by our surveillance networks. Unless," Vexthara said slowly, a terrible realization forming, "they developed it specifically to avoid our detection methods. What if they've been studying us far longer than we realized? What if first contact 50 years ago wasn't their first encounter with Zelani technology?" Before anyone could respond to this disturbing possibility, the main communication array activated. Admiral Chen's face appeared again. But this time, he wasn't alone. Behind him stood other humans in similar uniforms, and visible through the viewport of their command ship was something that made every Zelani present feel their blood turn cold. Earth, not the primitive world their intelligence reports had described, but a gleaming sphere surrounded by massive orbital installations, shipyards, and defensive platforms that dwarfed anything in Zelani space. "Hello again," Admiral Chen said pleasantly. "I thought you might appreciate seeing what we've been building while you were busy killing our colonists." The camera view expanded to show the full scope of human space around their homeworld. Hundreds of massive vessels were visible, with more emerging from construction facilities that looked like they could build entire fleets simultaneously. "You see," Chen continued, "humanity has an interesting trait that you never bothered to study. When faced with an existential threat, we don't just fight back. We adapt, we innovate, and we prepare. For 50 years, every human death at Zelani hands has been recorded, analyzed, and added to our motivation." Emperor Thexmaran stepped forward, his image towering over the human display. "You speak of preparation, but you face the might of an empire that has conquered 1,000 worlds, your species numbers in mere billions. We control quintillions of beings across 17 star systems." "Controlled," Chen corrected. Past tense. "Your subject species have been remarkably helpful once they learned that someone was finally capable of challenging Zelani rule. It turns out that 3,000 years of oppression creates a lot of accumulated resentment. New contacts began appearing on the tactical display ships that didn't match human designs, but were clearly operating alongside the human fleet. Vessels from dozens of different species, all converging on Zelani positions throughout the galaxy. You've been building an alliance, Vexthara realized with growing horror. We've been offering hope, Chen replied. Something the Zelani never understood how to do. When you rule through fear and force alone, you create enemies everywhere. We just gave those enemies the tools they needed to fight back. The tactical situation was deteriorating rapidly. Reports flooded in from across the Empire. Subject species uprising, human fleets appearing without warning, and Zilani forces being overwhelmed by coordinated attacks using unfamiliar technologies. Your Majesty? Kestal called out urgently. The defense platforms around Thexvara are detecting massive energy buildups from the approaching human vessels. They appear to be preparing for orbital bombardment. All platforms are ordered to fire immediately, the Emperor commanded. Destroy these ships before they can threaten the capital. The orbital defense grid that protected the Zilani homeworld represented the pinnacle of their military technology. Massive energy weapons capable of destroying entire fleets opened fire simultaneously, filling space with devastating plasma streams that should have vaporized any approaching vessels. The humans didn't even slow down. Their ships absorbed the plasma fire with what appeared to be some kind of energy conversion technology, growing brighter and more powerful with each hit. Instead of being destroyed, they seemed to be feeding off the defensive fire. Impossible, Mordeth gasped. They're converting our weapons' fire into power for their own systems. Admiral Chen's voice came over the communication array again. Did you really think we'd come here unprepared? Every weapon you've used against our people has been studied, analyzed, and countered. Your plasma technology is quite efficient, but it makes an excellent power source when properly harnessed. The human ships began returning fire, but their weapons were unlike anything the Zilani had ever encountered. Instead of energy beams or plasma bolts, they fired what looked like controlled gravitational distortions that tore through Zilani shields and hulls, as if they weren't there. They're using gravity weapons, Kessel reported in disbelief. They're literally warping space-time to destroy our ships. More disturbing than the weapons themselves was their precision. The human ships weren't firing indiscriminately. They were targeting specific systems, disabling rather than destroying when possible, and showing tactical awareness that suggested real-time intelligence about Zilani ship designs. They know our weaknesses, Vexthera realized. Every vulnerability, every design flaw. They've been studying captured Zilani technology for decades. Emperor Thexmaran's psychic presence radiated fury and disbelief. How is this possible? How did we miss the development of an entire military power structure? Because, Admiral Chen answered, somehow monitoring their internal communications, you were looking for threats that matched your understanding of how civilizations develop. You expected us to follow the same technological progression as every other species you've encountered. You never considered that we might choose to develop entirely different approaches to the problems of space warfare. The human fleet had reached Thexvara's inner system, their ships moving in formations that demonstrated centuries of tactical evolution. They weren't attacking randomly or with the desperate fury of underdogs. They moved with the confidence of a military force that had spent decades preparing for exactly this moment. All remaining fleets are ordered to converge on the capital system, Vexthara commanded. Every available ship, from every sector. Already done, Chen replied, his voice carrying a note of sadness. We've been monitoring your communications and fleet movements. Your remaining forces are currently engaged with human units that were positioned to intercept them. I'm afraid your reinforcements won't be arriving. The strategic display showed the truth of his words. Every Zilani fleet that had survived the initial attacks was now pinned down by human forces, unable to assist the homeworld defense. What do you want? Emperor Thexmaran demanded, his imperial authority finally cracking under the weight of an impossible situation. Justice, Chen replied simply. For 50 years of genocide, for millions of human lives, for the arrogance of believing that might makes right, the Zilani Empire ends today. The human ships took up positions around Thexvara, their weapons trained on the planet's surface. But instead of firing, they waited, creating a siege formation that trapped the entire Zilani government and military command. However, Chen continued, we're not you. We don't believe in extermination for its own sake. You have one opportunity to surrender unconditionally and face justice for your crimes. refuse, and we will demonstrate exactly what human warfare looks like when we stop holding back." End quote. The command center fell into stunned silence as the reality of their situation became clear. The mighty Zilani Empire, rulers of the galaxy for 3 millennia, was being offered terms of surrender by the species they had dismissed as primitive savages. And for the first time in their long history, they had no choice but to consider accepting them. Number Imperial Command, panicked human war fleets, materialized without warning. The silence in the Zilani command center stretched like a taut wire ready to snap. Emperor Thex Moran's massive holographic form loomed over the tactical displays, showing human ships positioned throughout Zilani space, his 3,000-year dynasty facing its first moment of genuine vulnerability. "You speak of surrender," the Emperor finally said, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority even in defeat. "But you cannot possibly govern an empire, spanning 17 star systems. Your species lacks the numbers, the experience, We don't want to govern your empire," Admiral Chen interrupted, his calm tone more unsettling than any threat. "We want to dismantle it completely and return freedom to the species you've oppressed for millennia." We, behind the Emperor, Admiral Vex Thara studied the tactical displays with growing desperation. Every option she considered led to the same conclusion. They were completely outmaneuvered, outgunned, and surrounded by an enemy that had planned this operation with terrifying precision. "Your Imperial Majesty," she said quietly, "perhaps we should consider—" "Never." The Emperor's psychic aura flared with rage. "I will not be the first Zilani ruler to surrender to an inferior species. All available forces will make a final stand. Better to die with honor than live in submission to these primitives." Admiral Chen sighed, the sound somehow conveying both sadness and inevitability. "I was hoping you would choose differently." "Very well. Let me show you what human warfare actually looks like when we're not concerned about minimizing casualties." The main display shifted to show space around the capital world. The human ships, which had been maintaining their siege positions, suddenly began moving in a complex pattern that seemed almost like a dance. Their hulls began glowing with energy signatures that made Zilani sensors scream warnings about imminent power overloads. "Energy readings are off the scale," Commander Kestal reported. "Whatever they're preparing to do, it's drawing more power than our entire planetary grid. All defense platforms, fire everything," Vex Thara commanded. The orbital defense grid unleashed its complete arsenal: plasma cannons, particle beams, quantum torpedoes, and graviton mines. The space around Thex Vara lit up like a star being born as every weapon the Zilani possessed fired simultaneously at the human ships. The humans didn't even attempt to dodge. Their vessels simply absorbed the incoming fire, their hulls growing brighter and more radiant with each hit. Instead of taking damage, they appeared to be storing the energy from every Zilani weapon for some greater purpose. "They're not just converting our weapons fire," Analyst Mordith reported in amazement. "They're using it as fuel for something massive. The energy patterns suggest they're building up to—" His words were cut off as the human ships suddenly released all their accumulated energy in a coordinated pulse that swept across the entire star system. But instead of destruction, the wave brought something far more devastating to Zilani authority: information. Every communication device in Zilani space suddenly activated simultaneously, broadcasting the same signal. On millions of screens across hundreds of worlds, the same message played in thousands of different languages, reaching every sentient being in the Empire. It was a historical record. Not propaganda or political speeches, but cold, factual documentation of 3,000 years of Zilani rule. Recordings of conquered worlds, statistics on enslaved populations, detailed accounts of genocides carried out against dozens of species. Most damning of all, it included recent communications between Zilani commanders discussing the extermination of human colonies, as if they were discussing pest control. The message reached not just the subject species of the Empire, but the Zilani population itself. Many ordinary Zelani citizens had never known the full extent of their government's actions. They had been told they were bringing civilization and order to primitive species, not conducting systematic extermination campaigns. "Turn it off," the Emperor commanded. "Block the transmissions." "I can't," Kestal replied frantically. "They're using our own communication networks against us. Every relay station, every planetary grid, they've somehow gained access to all of it." Admiral Chen's voice came over the communication array, speaking directly to the Zelani leadership, while his message continued broadcasting across the galaxy. "This is how humanity wages war, Emperor. We don't just defeat our enemies militarily, we defeat the ideas that made their cruelty possible." The results were immediate and catastrophic for Zelani authority. Across their empire, subject species that had endured millennia of oppression began rising up with coordinated precision. But these weren't desperate, doomed rebellions. These uprisings were supported by human technology and weapons that made them capable of actually defeating Zelani forces. "Reports coming in from all sectors," Vexthara announced, her voice hollow with defeat. "Uprisings on Kepler 442, Tau Ceti, Wolf 359. The colonial populations are using human weapons. Our garrison forces are being overwhelmed." "How?" the Emperor demanded. "How did they distribute weapons to our subject species without our knowledge?" Chen smiled grimly. "The same way we positioned our fleets throughout your space without detection. We've been preparing for this day for 50 years, and that preparation included making contact with every species that had suffered under Zelani rule. Did you really think you could commit genocide for 3 millennia without making enemies?" The strategic display painted a picture of empire-wide collapse. Red indicators spread across the map like a virus, as Zelani control crumbled on world after world. The coordination was perfect. Human fleets had positioned themselves to support uprisings that began the moment their historical broadcast started playing. "This is impossible," Mordeth muttered, staring at the incoming reports. The logistics required to coordinate operations across 17 star systems simultaneously. It would require decades of planning and resources equivalent to the entire industrial output of a species that's been preparing for total war. Chen finished. "When you decided to exterminate humanity, you made one crucial error in judgment. You assumed we would fight like every other species you'd encountered, desperately, reactively, and alone." More human ships continued materializing throughout Zelani space as their stealth systems deactivated. The true scale of their fleet became apparent. Not hundreds of vessels, but thousands. Entire battle groups that had been hiding in asteroid fields, behind moons, and in the dark spaces between systems. "My God," Vexthara whispered. "How many ships do you have?" "Enough," Chen replied simply. "We built our entire civilization around a single goal: ending the Zelani Empire. Every human colony you destroyed, every family you murdered, every atrocity you committed, it all fed our determination to ensure this day would come." Emperor Thexmaran's holographic form flickered as power systems throughout the palace began failing. The broadcasts had triggered more than just uprisings. They had provided detailed technical specifications for disabling Zelani infrastructure. Across the Empire, human-trained saboteurs were striking at power grids, communication networks, and military installations with surgical precision. "You cannot possibly maintain control over this many star systems," the Emperor protested. "Your species lacks the administrative capability to—" "We don't want control," Chen interrupted. "We want freedom for everyone. Every species you've enslaved will govern themselves. Every world you've conquered will determine its own future. The age of galactic empires ends with you." The tactical display showed the final collapse of organized Zelani resistance. Their remaining fleets were surrendering or being destroyed. Their homeworld was surrounded and defenseless, and their authority was evaporating on hundreds of worlds simultaneously. "What becomes of the Zelani people?" Vexthara asked quietly. Admiral Chen's expression softened slightly. "Those who committed war crimes will face justice. Those who simply followed orders will have the opportunity to build better lives in a galaxy where might doesn't make right. We're not seeking revenge. We're seeking an end to the cycle of violence that your empire has perpetuated. The communication array activated again, but this time it wasn't carrying Admiral Chen's voice. Instead, representatives from dozens of species began speaking, the former subjects of the Zelani Empire, now free to determine their own destinies. The Kepler 442 system declares its independence from Zelani rule and gratefully acknowledges the assistance of the Terran Defense Coalition. The mining colonies of Tau Ceti formally request membership in the new Galactic Federation of Free Worlds. The Vega system announces the formation of its own democratic government and offers humanitarian aid to displaced Zelani civilians. One by one, the worlds of the Empire were choosing their own paths, facilitated by human technology and protected by human fleets. What emerged wasn't conquest or replacement tyranny, but something the galaxy hadn't seen in millennia. Genuine self-determination for all species. Emperor Thexmaron's image began to fade as power systems throughout the palace failed completely. "This is not possible, Emperor. This," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "No species has ever shown mercy to a defeated enemy. You will rule just as we did, through force and fear." "No," Chen replied firmly. "We won't, because that's not who humans are. We fight when we must, we prepare when we're threatened, and we protect those who can't protect themselves. But we don't rule over others because we believe in freedom for everyone, even former enemies." The great crystal throne room of the Zelani Imperial Command fell dark as the last power systems failed. Outside, human ships maintained their positions around Thexvara, but their weapons remained powered down. They had achieved total victory without destroying the capital world or massacring its population. Admiral Vexthara looked around the darkened command center, then slowly began removing her rank insignia. "I formally surrender the Zelani Imperial Navy to the Terran Defense Coalition," she announced. "Accepted," Chen replied. "Transport ships are standing by to evacuate your personnel. You'll be taken to processing stations where your individual cases will be reviewed fairly." As Zelani personnel filed out of the command center under human escort, Vexthara paused at the doorway. "How did you know?" she asked. "How did you know we would eventually find and attack your colonies?" Admiral Chen appeared on a portable display carried by one of the human soldiers. "Because we've been watching you for 3,000 years," he said quietly. "Humanity didn't just develop spaceflight 50 years ago. We've been traveling between the stars for millennia, observing, learning, staying hidden. We've watched every species you've destroyed, every civilization you've erased." The implications of his words sent a chill through Vexthara. "Not without becoming conquerors ourselves," Chen replied. "Until you threatened humanity directly, we had no right to impose our will on the galaxy. But once you made that choice, you gave us the justification we needed to end your empire forever." As the last Zelani official was escorted from the command center, human technicians began the work of dismantling the control systems that had oppressed the galaxy for 3 millennia. The Zelani Empire was truly dead. And in its place, something unprecedented was being born. A galactic civilization based on cooperation rather than domination. Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching as former Zelani worlds began broadcasting their declarations of independence and their requests to join the new federation. Humanity had achieved something no species in galactic history had ever accomplished. They had ended a cycle of oppression without simply becoming the next oppressor. The galaxy was finally free.